All right, everybody, it's 2:01 and we're going to get started. I just pressed the record button, so I've got that task out of the way. Now I'm going to go ahead and close down my windows here so we don't get distracted. All right, so my name's David England. I work here at Mojo, and today we're going to talk about the Mojo Dialer. I'm going to demonstrate its use and go through some different scenarios on how you can get started a dialing session, how you can use Mojo to dial several different ways through your data. I'm just going to go ahead and close this doc down. Sorry about that. Normally I do that before my webinars. I've got Brandon Wall with me. He's a longtime Mojo employee, and he's going to answer any questions you have. This is a muted webinar, and that's just because, again, I don't like a lot of distractions. A lot of time there's feedback and whatnot, and it's not a great situation. So if you have any questions, we're still going to answer them for you. What you're going to want to do is in the Go To Webinar pane, you're going to go ahead and type those out, and Brandon's going to answer those in real time. Anything he thinks is going to be valuable for everybody to hear, he'll go ahead and leave those unanswered. And at the end of my presentation, I'll cover those. And I'll also request any other questions to come in. So as I said, we're going to talk about the Power Dialer today. Now, Mojo is a prospecting system. It's got a lot of bells and whistles to it. What we're known for is our dialer. So that's what we're going to focus on today. I did the poll at opening up this webinar, and I noticed that the majority of you on this call today have been with us for less than 3 months. And I'm actually happy to see that because you're in a prime place as a client to really learn how to use Mojo and go to the next step with dialing with it. There's a lot of filters in Mojo people aren't aware of, and I think hopefully you're going to get a lot out of this. Now, before I begin, one other thing I want to point out, Mojo is a unique technology. A lot of people think of Mojo as a software company. While yes, we are a software company, primarily what we are first, our real domain, is we're actually a telephone company. All of our dialing infrastructure is tied directly into the public telephone network up here in northern New England. And that means that you will get the best call quality possible using the Mojo system versus other dialing systems out there. We're going to talk about some things that can impact that. If you're sitting there scratching your head like, well, geez, I don't always get great call quality. Well, we're going to talk about some things that can create that issue for you here in a little bit. But that is where we stand as a company. We're really a telephone company. We're kind of like a Verizon, if you will, and we're tied right into the public telephone network. There's no VoIP in our upline. It's all copper based, and we've got a million little dialing servers out there crunching out. I think at last check, we were doing just over 8.5 million calls a month. So that's a lot of prospecting going on all over North America. There's a variety of different licenses you can have with us. With Mojo, you can have a $10 license. You just access the Hosted Lead Manager, or you can subscribe to our single line dialing license, which gets you that single line power dialer, as well as click to call. Or you can go for the full Monty and get the 3-line dialer, which is going to get you up to 300 calls per hour and really get you in contact with a lot of people. But that mode isn't for everybody. Some people like the single line. It's about a 60-40 split right now as a company. 60% have the triple line, 40% have the single line. The nice thing about our pricing is that it's modular. For any of you on this call right now learning about the dialer, know this. If at some point, let's say in the spring, you're prospecting, and then in June, July, August, you want to take the summer off with your children like I wish I could do, you can downgrade to just the lead manager license, that $10 a month. All your data stays intact, all of your previous call notes and all that fun stuff. Everything stays the same. And then in the fall, when you ramp things back up, you just go in and click a box and turn that dialer back on without missing a beat. And a lot of people don't realize that. And it's our problem. We're not marketing that functionality correctly. But that's a great way to secure your data and make sure long-term everything's where you want it to be. All right. Enough talking. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop in to the settings area. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of settings, but you may have missed something during your setup, or we may uncover something today on this call you weren't aware of. So I'm going to go to the settings area. Brandon's telling me to make things bigger, so I'm going to go on his cue. How's that look, Brandon? You think so? Because I'm on the 27-inch Mac, and to me, it looks like it's way off. I'm on a development account. So it's not rendering right on my screen. Does that look okay?
It's kind of blurred. It's kind of cut off part of it now, so it needs to be refreshed.
Yeah, so you know what I'm going to do? Sorry, everybody, but how's that look, Brandon?
It's still like cutting off part of it.
What part's cutting off?
The end, the far right part.
But can you see the data grid in the calling profiles area?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's fine. Sorry about that, folks. We're having a little technical glitch. Like I said, I'm on a development account. They're probably in there playing around. I know better, but this is a clean, fresh account. And I didn't want to trouble you with a ton of data. So again, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the settings area. Brandon confirmed you can see everything. Nothing's cut off of importance, so we're going to proceed. So the first settings that pop up are indeed the power dialer settings. And the first section is the caller ID. In order to add a caller ID, you simply click on the Add Caller ID button. You enter your phone number. You can give it a name. And then you can click the Verify button. And then we're going to call you because we don't allow caller ID spoofing through Mojo. So we're going to call you. You're going to pick the phone up. And you're going to say, hey, it's going to say press 1 to accept this or to verify. You press 1 and it automatically gets added to your database. Now, the thing about Mojo people don't get is you can have as many caller IDs as you want. We're talking about in a little while that's going to, in a little bit here, why that's going to be super important to make you more successful prospecting on the phone. But you can see here we have one caller ID, and that's how we put that in there. I can name it so that I can, if you take advantage of the Mojo voice service, which we'll talk about, you can name it by area code. Let's say, Chicago, wherever you're calling, you can actually break it down and just name it by the different areas that you call into, and then you can easily pick those out of the list before you start a calling session. The next area is the callback and voicemail messages. Now, with Mojo, if you're making phone calls and you come across an answer machine message that you hear in your headset, we have a quick drop button. And when you press that, and we're going to show it to you in a minute, when you press it, it'll automatically move you on to the next line that's dialing, okay? And it will drop that message at the beep. So you don't waste time listening to the message and then manually dropping that message. So that's why we have voicemail messages. You can have as many of those as you want. You can add them here or you can add them in the call wizard. I'll show you that in a moment. Callback messages for anybody that is multi-line dialing. In the rare event that two people pick up at the same time, we automatically play a message recorded in your voice. This is where you record it, where you can say, hey, whatever your script is for it. We don't give out scripts for this. But hey, it's Dave with ABC Realty. I'm having a problem with my phone. I'll give you a call right back or whatever. And then what happens in our system is we don't totally abandon that call. We call that person back on the next round of calls. So it stacks people like cordwood, but that's a bad analogy because in truth, I mean, it doesn't happen that often. I think when I do dialing testing, I'm getting about 2 callbacks for every 100 dials. So that's the experience we have here. And that's where you create your drop voicemail messages and your callback messages. In the power dialer settings, here's where you may find some stuff here that you weren't aware of. The first one is Zone Guard. Zone Guard prevents you from dialing into an area, prospecting into an area during a time frame that you shouldn't be doing it. So you can turn Zone Guard off by clicking on it, on the setting that I just clicked on, and then you can set the periods of time that you want to dial. And the dialer will dial those phone numbers in your list that are in a time zone that are within that's within that time frame. So if you didn't want to call someone outside of 8 a.m., so before 8 a.m., let's say 7:30, the dialer is actually going to omit those from your dialing session. So that's a little level of protection, really handy for those of you who dial across time zone. Live answer beep. Now, live answer beep's tricky. We've considered taking it out of the system because it's not used correctly. But we leave it in for the rare case that it is important. So what is live answer beep? When you're dialing out with Mojo and we detect a loop drop in our telco lines, we will play a beep back to you before you hear the hello. And a lot of people use this because they're multitaskers and they don't want to have to be staring at the screen. So they're doing other stuff. Beep, hello is, and they go into the pitch. Now, there's another reason why we have that in here. There are some phone types, and we'll get to it in a minute, that when you dial into Mojo with them, That connection from you to our dialing server, we have no control over that. That is on the back of the phone you dial in with. So if there's a delay in that line, you can get a delayed hello. So some people use Live Answer Beep because inherently with their VoIP phone or whatever they're using, when someone picks up, they miss the last or the first half of the hello or maybe all of the hello. Having the Live Answer Beep on helps them know, hey, go into my pitch, even though I didn't hear a hello. Here's where there can be a train wreck. If you don't have an issue with your phone dialing into Mojo, you don't have any delay, having the Live Answer Beep on because you're a multitasker, well, it may cause a delay. Here's why. When someone picks up the phone, you would normally hear the hello, but because we're playing a beep, we're playing the beep first, and that competes with them saying hello. So a lot of times people call into us and say, I don't hear the first hello. We look and we're like, yeah, shut your Live Answer Beep off. And then they send us a kudos in our ticket system. You guys are great. And it's because we don't really, describe this feature very well, and we're working on that. So if you don't have a first hello issue with your phone that you're dialing the Mojo with, don't turn that on unless you understand the risk. No wait voicemail drop. The no wait voicemail drop is simple. When you press that voicemail button, as we talked about earlier, we wait for the beep and then we drop your message. Now, there are some phone systems, for instance, if you are calling an area with a lot of AT&T cell phones, sometimes the minute amount of time that we wait to confirm that that beep is done on the answer machine you're calling, sometimes the message that we drop doesn't start in time. And the system, the AT&T cell phone system, feeds back audio that says, sorry, we didn't get your message. Would you like to try it again? I'm sure you've heard it when you've called someone on their cell phone. And AT&T is really the only one. It's not all the AT&T network. It's certain areas. It has a problem with that. So what we do is we have this no wait voicemail drop. If you check it off, you wait for the beep and then you hit the drop message button and it drops it right then. We avoid the automation. And that doesn't happen for everybody. It's a rare case, but it does happen, and that's why we have that option there. The left-handed dialing bar, when you're dialing with Mojo, you can have the option to have the dialing bar show up on the left versus on the right. Maybe it's better for you. Maybe that's where you're more comfortable with it. You can do that by checking this option. The do not delete disconnected numbers is an option that will turn off the native feature of Mojo where when we get a disconnected signal, we don't want you calling those people back. You don't want to call those people back most of the time. And we will remove that number from that record. Well, why would we do that? Well, we've been doing this longer than anybody else. In our years of being a dialing company, has proven to us that a lot of agents don't want to have to worry about massaging their data. And we, back in the day, 2007, 2008, we had people come to us and say, I'm dialing this list of 200 people. It started off being 5,000 people. Now it's down to 2,000 or 500, and no one ever picks the phone up. Well, every one of those numbers was a disconnected number, and they just didn't pay attention. So we came up with a feature to automatically remove them, and it works great. There are cases, though, where you may not want to delete disconnected numbers. Here's an example. Again, we're a telco company. We use what's called signaling, and there can be a false signal that's given back to us. So we can't determine. There's no way for us to know if it's correct or it's not correct. Here's an example. Someone's texting on their phone, drives into a telephone line or a hub out in front of your block. That phone line is now going to give off a disconnected signaling. And that may be a good phone number you're trying to call. But unfortunately, we just were told that it was disconnected and we removed it from your record. So you may want to, it's up to you. If you live in a snowy area, like we do up here in New Hampshire, if there's an ice storm, shut that off. I don't know. It's a great option to have. You can default to have it do not delete any disconnected numbers, and you can go through manually in the My Data screen and remove them yourself. Last but not least, the training list. The training list is in there. We added it several months ago. We had a lot of people calling and say, hey, I have a new agent, or I'm just starting out. I want to learn how to use this dialer thing, and I don't want to call real people. I don't want on-the-job training. I want to try it out. So we added a training calling list. That's what we'll be demonstrating today, where you can dial virtual phone numbers, and every once in a while, a recording picks up and plays you back a message, and it simulates an actual dialing session. And this is great because let's say right now you're a broker on the phone, or you're an agent that is a telemarketer, and Joe the telemarketer is working great for you. But something happens. Maybe Joe goes work somewhere else, and you want to hire and train somebody new. Well, in the event that you delete the training calling list, you can always come back to the settings area and check it back off again. Or if it's already checked but you've deleted it, you can uncheck and check it again. And we will populate that training list again. So you never really delete it. It's always there for you. All right, let's move on here. I'm taking too long, as usual. Mojo Voice. I'm not going to cover this in too much detail, but we do have a virtual phone number service. It's called Mojo Voice. You can purchase it. It's either $5 or $10 a month. The standard service for $5 a month gives you a virtual phone number that you can pulse out wherever you're calling. And when somebody calls it back, you can have it press 9 for opt-out, so they auto put themselves on the DNC if that works for you. You can turn that feature off, but the main point of the basic service is it will route to any phone number that you put in our system. And the beautiful thing about that is you can just display this number and not get a bunch of calls back to your cell phone in the middle of the night. Our enhanced service adds voicemail, and the cool thing about our voicemail, because it's integrated into Mojo, what'll happen is when they call it, they go to connect, it doesn't connect, they leave you a voicemail, it's going to email you a recording of that voicemail, you're going to get a notification in Mojo that you got a voicemail, and then there's a report in Mojo where you can go through and listen to the voicemails that you got the day before or whatnot. And of course, we store that voicemail on that contact's record, so you've always got an audit trail of that communication chain. So that's why I really like Mojo Voice. Calling scripts, we have calling scripts inside of Mojo. We have some that users have contributed to Mojo, like you can see here. So inside your Mojo, you'll have this little library. I've got the expired one here. I can read it. I can make edits to it. I can back up. Oop. I can back up, go back to calling scripts. I can create my own from blank. I just need to name it. And then I can say hello, and then we can bring tags in. First name. In these tags that you use, look how many tags there are here. You can use these tags, and they're throughout Mojo, wherever you make a template. And basically, whenever someone picks the phone up, that script will fill up with all the information for that contact in these tags. So first name would turn into Mary. Their address would turn into 123 Main Street. But on your next call, all the information on that script will be different because it's different contact information. Hope that makes some sense. So I'm not going to save that, but I would recommend that you go through and take a look at all these scripts. We have them for Just Listed Your Souls, FSBOs, Farm Calling, Expired, you name it. The next thing we're going to talk about is lead sheets. I love lead sheets. I mean, it's just a no-brainer, in my opinion. A lead sheet is a way for you to collect information on a call outside of notes. This is stuff like appointment times, very specific questions I'll show you here in a minute. And once you fill it out on the call, you can save it to the record, or you can ship it off to somebody. So let's say you have someone who's on the phones for you, or maybe you're on this call right now and you're making prospecting calls for somebody else. Use lead sheets. Get together with that person. Be like, hey, what do I need to answer for you in order for you to be prepared when you go on an appointment? And they'll tell you, and you just create a lead sheet and you fill that out every time you're on a call with someone that you're setting an appointment for, and you zip it off to them, and they're like, hey, thanks a lot. I have all the information on this appointment. And here's what they look like. Like, here's a pre-qualifier. And these three are standard inside of your Mojo account right now. These are standard real estate ones that were provided to us by some coaching organizations. For instance, if what I say makes sense to you and you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning to list your home with me when I come out? Yes, no. And it goes through. If you're in real estate, you've probably seen these questions 50 times. They're in your Mojo. You can edit these, or you can delete questions. You can add questions. We add those by default to your system just so we prime you guys, so you know that it's there. If I wanted to make my own, I just click Add Lead Sheet, give it a name, call it Lead Sheet because I don't want to be too complicated. Add a question. What type? I don't know. I'm going to do a date and time. Hit Create. What's the question? What time is the appointment? and you just click save. Pretty simple. And now when this shows up on the contact form, it's a date time field. So I'm going to get back out of there. I just wanted to point that stuff out to you guys. Now we're going to head back to the data and dialer screen, because the one thing we haven't talked about is, hey, in order to dial with Mojo, you got to get data in the system, right? And there's a variety of different ways. That's not what this call's about, but you can import via file, CSV or Excel file. Maybe you have the Mojo expired service, the Mojo FSBO service, Vulcan 7 service, or maybe even the RedX, and your data is automatically coming into Mojo. Well, you're taken care of. But there's a lot of folks out there that still import data from, say, the tax records, excuse me, or any other health insurance lead providers and whatnot. And that is how you'll be getting your data into Mojo. Excuse me, I had to take a sip of my water. But as long as you know, obviously, you're going to have data inside of Mojo. Once you bring the data in, we're going to focus on one other thing real quick. And that is the workflow, the inherent, or I should say, the workflow that we built into Mojo after years of dealing with sales agents on what their workflows are and what they've asked for. And that is this. You have 3 areas for data. And we're very flat. We put them right at your fingertips. We don't want you to have to dig around. You've got properties calling lists. And if you're scratching your head saying, why isn't that in my Mojo? It's because you didn't choose real estate as your industry. You probably, they probably don't pertain to you. But there's properties calling lists. Properties calling lists, you can't import raw data into them. Why? Because they're special. They're dynamic and they update almost daily. Whenever your lead provider posts leads into your Mojo account, if you've got a posting service connected between us and them, the properties within these lists update. So if an expired property on Monday becomes active on Thursday, it's going to go up to the active list and you're not going to call it. That's what properties calling lists are. It's for real estate data. Calling lists are lists you create when you import data, or you maybe you're a cold directory client, or obviously maybe you have the neighborhood search from Mojo. You're going to create calling lists. You'll name them, and your calling lists will come in here. And last but not least, we have our groups. Now, groups are a different animal. Groups are technically for the way we've designed Mojo for qualified data. Whether you're importing qualified data, whether it may be your past client, SOI, have-mets, whatever, you're bringing those in, or you're creating it on the phone while you're prospecting, such as an appointment set, a future follow-up, or a hot lead. You can see here we give you some default groups. You can add as many groups as you want. And the one thing I haven't pointed out yet is you can create sub-lists off your list, and you can create subgroups. So if you wanted a properties list that's expired in Baltimore with this area code, you can do all that. That's not what this webinar is about, but I just wanted to point that out. So what's this workflow I'm talking about? This middle and left column, so properties calling lists and calling lists. That should be where you're putting your unqualified new leads. People you haven't spoke to, whether it's expired off-market properties for sale by owners, a just listed, just sold list, your farm, well, it doesn't matter. If you haven't talked to them, that's where you should put them. And the goal is to fire up any one of our dialing modes, call on that data and get it qualified and push it into a group. Folks, if you don't work that workflow, you're going to have what's called database bloat. It's an ugly thing. It's even worse than the after Thanksgiving Day meal bloat. What happens is if you make calls to people in your property's calling list, expireds, cancel, withdrawns, in your calling list, maybe you're just listed, just sold or whatever, and you don't push them off to a group, well, now you start to mix qualified and unqualified data. And now it becomes tricky to determine who should I be prospecting versus who am I supposed to be following up with, and versus, who is a dead lead, right? They don't want anything to do with me. So the goal, if for those of you that chose you've been with Mojo for less than a month or 1 to 3 months in that poll, maybe you didn't know this. Those of you who said you've been with me for more than a year, you probably learned this the hard way, or you already knew it and you prepared for it. But you don't want to keep people you've qualified in your calling list or properties calling list. Move them into a group. Create a group if we don't have one that fits. That's fine. The main thing is just to remember, I should say there's one caveat to that. If you called someone, little Joey picks up the phone, you're asking for his mother, Karen, and Karen's not there, You didn't qualify that person. You can certainly mark it as contacted if you want on the dialer, which we'll talk about, but don't take that person out of the list, right? Because you didn't qualify them. You don't know if it's yes, no, or they're dead yet. So that's how it works, left to right. And we're going to talk about how you do that when you're on a call. Again, I just want to reiterate one more time because a lot of people get frustrated with database bloat. You don't want to leave new unqualified contacts or leads in your properties calling list or regular calling list. We want to move them to a group. That way we can categorize them, just like the old days when we use index cards and manila folders. All right. Now we're going to talk about how do we get data into the dialer. Well, it's really simple. It's almost too simple, if there's such a thing. The way we get data into the dialer is we simply select the list or the sublist that the data is in, which we want to call. So what we do is we just select it, and when you select a list or a sublist or a group or a subgroup, in the preview in the data grid, what you're going to see is the data that is in that list, group, sublist, whatever, all shows up down here. And now I've got options. Now I have options of how I can send that to the dialer. I can either select some records from my view, which is probably a 8-month-old feature. I can select some records, or I can fire the whole list into the dialer. Let's take a look at that. So I can do a select here. I just made a selection. It's probably the first 10 records. So I'm doing thinking right now. Remember I just said that. Write that down. I'm thinking. I have to think right now. What is it about this data I want to call? Maybe it's I can see how many attempts are on it. Maybe I could see that it's in a certain neighborhood in this list or a certain area code. Whatever the reason, I'm selecting this group of data from my list. I can send that to the dialer and have it only call what I've selected here. And by do that, regardless of how I'm pushing data to the dialer, I just click the big red power dialer button. And it will ask me, see, Mojo realizes I've selected only some records. So it's giving me an option. They're like, Mojo's saying, wait, I'm confused. Do you want to send just the selected records, the green button? Or were you just playing around with your data and you do intend to send the entire list? Well, why do we ask the question? Here's why. Back to that thinking thing. If you select the selected records option, we are not going to provide you with filters and calling logic to make up a call plan for you because you're telling us this is the data I want to call. It's as simple as that. We'll show you what it looks like when you send an entire list here in a minute, and that'll make more sense to you. Now, in the event that I want to call based on an order, this is new. Came out, I think, last week. Brandon, he's nodding at me, yes. We brought it out last week. You can now send data to the dialer in a certain order. To do that, you have to use that select method. How would I do that? Well, I've got my Mojo training list selected. And let's say, in this case, this data set's got everything in it. Let's just say I want to send it to the dialer based on area code, numerical order area code. Now, I could apply filters to this. I could sort it by email if there was email addresses, and I could prioritize people with emails before people without emails. But regardless, all you need to know is however it looks on this data grid, we can dial by that sort, excuse me. And you can either do a select based on the sort, or you can choose select all. Once you click select all, we take a snapshot. We're like, okay, clearly they want to dial from numerical order, least to greatest, based on area code. You send it up to the power dialer and you choose selected records. Because again, you've done the thinking. You're not relying on us. And that'll be clearer to you in a minute. So you just say selected records. And what pops up is our call wizard. And this is a dumbed down call wizard. The left-hand side is very simple compared to sending the entire list. Your only options for the call plan are dial through selected contacts. That's the only option. And whether or not you have the call hammer on or off. Now, what the call hammer is, if you don't know this is a no-brainer as well. If your contacts have more than one record, if if we reach a result on, let's say, phone number 1, and it's indicative of a no contact, we're not going to change out your contact. We're just going to start dialing the next number. So this is something we came out with years ago. People have caught on, whatever, but we came out with it in May of 2009. How bad is that I remember that? And it'll allow you to really penetrate each one of your contacts versus only calling the first phone number for everybody in your list. You're calling all the phone numbers available and you're saturating that list. So these are the only two major calling options. Auto send email, we'll talk about in a minute. We'll talk about these other settings in a minute. So why is it so simplified? Because you're doing the thinking. What's it look like if we have Mojo do the thinking? Well, let's take a look. I select my list again. And this time, I don't make any selections. I don't do any sorting. I want to send the whole list. I'm going to click the power dialer button. And it's going to warn you that you're calling a trending list because people freak out. They think it's real people picking up and they get all weird about it. And now I have what are called our easy calling modes. Why would you use this versus the other method? That's going to be a question you guys got to be thinking. If you're a real estate agent calling off-market data, you're probably going to want to use this method. And that is the send everything up to the dialer. Because we've got the call plans in it that make sense for real estate. And there really isn't a scenario you can throw at us in real estate prospecting that we don't have covered here. So by default, most people are going to use the entire list option versus the select to dial. But let's say, you have a list of 2,000 people in it, and you only want to call the people that you have attempts of 15 or more. For some reason, people like selecting that visually on the data grid. I don't know why, but they do. And that is one reason to use select to dial. And there are some more. Brandon, if you want to give some examples in the chat of why people use select to dial, that'd be great. But in a nutshell, it's really right now, since last week, because you can dial by sort. Most of the time, you're going to use this option. So let me back up because I just talked too much. Again, I just selected my list. This could be my expireds. It could be a just listed, just sold list. It could be my canceled, my withdrawns, my FSBOs. It doesn't matter. It could be a list of my SOIs. Our easy calling modes have all those covered. I click power dialer. And now, again, we've got our calling modes. The first option, we have two default options. It's kind of like vanilla and chocolate. Either you want to call this list from where you last left off, or you want to call the list from top to bottom. Pretty simple, right? Not so. There are some other filters you can apply to it, things that customers have helped us work through over the years. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's go back to call this list from where I last left off. And actually, it's starting with the new leads first. This is super popular with expireds. As most of you know, if you're in real estate, or maybe you're calling a list, you're in insurance, and each day you have a daily lead distribution of, let's say, 50 leads or something like that. Well, we all want to saturate our lists. We all want to call from top to bottom, right? You would never want to leave any rock unturned. But what happens in the event that you call through half of a list and you want to start over again, but I got 10 new expireds this morning. I want to call those first. That's what this option's all about. This is like insurance. It's insurance for your dialer, for your prospecting. In the case of your real estate agent, I'll stick there. You're calling your expireds. Your day one with Mojo, you have 50 new expireds. You call halfway through them. You should be calling all the way through them, but I'm not your sales coach. I won't slap you. You should be calling all the way through them. But let's say you only called halfway through them. The next day, you're going to get new expireds or new cancels or new withdrawns. That's just the way it works. I think with the exception of January 1st is the only day we don't dish them out to people. Once you get those new ones the next day, if you leave this option checked, it's going to call the brand new ones first, skip over the 50 that you called yesterday, and begin on number 51 that you were to dial next the day before. See what I just did there? We exclude the ones that you called yesterday because you want to dial where you last left off, but we do throw in the brand new ones, and then we start off where you left off. That way, you don't have to have the anxiety. Am I calling all my new leads? My new leads, those are the hot ones. Everyone's calling. Am I going to call them? We've got it taken care of. Now, of course, if you wanted to call a list from top to bottom, you could still do that. You just select the call this list from top to bottom. And this is popular if you're working a data set, let's say I just listed your sold list, and you're calling around an open house. And you've plotted out your little area, your farm, and this other house on Oak Street, or I should say May 1st, this house on Oak Street um, went listed. You wanted to call people about it. And then let's say in that list that you were calling, you only got, I don't know, three-quarters of the way through it, or maybe you got all the way through it, but you stop prospecting based on that just listed. If their neighbor goes listed or sold, or maybe that house gets sold, you could still load that same list into the dialer, but again, you'd probably want to call it from call this list from top to bottom. They don't remember the last time you called them. They're not going to be, upset with you, but you do want to call them all again. So that's an example of when you use call this list from top to bottom, regardless of where I last left off. Whew, beat that one to death. Before we get into the optional dialing filters, which are important too, that's where there's a lot of sizzle. We're going to talk about auto send email. You can send emails, and emails are a thing that we're really focused on in Mojo right now. The logic, the scheduling based on actions, all that fun stuff. So this is a first step in that whole marketing component, auto send email. When you're calling out, you can have templates assigned to each one of these last results. So there's only one in this account, so I'll just use it here. Let's say every time I make contact with somebody, actually, let's use it no contact. Let's say every time I choose no contact, I want an email to go out with some exciting news because I didn't get a chance to tell them on the phone. I just want them to get this email about this open house. Bring all your friends. There's going to be balloons, a jumpy house, whatever. I can do that before I start my call session and click save. And now when I'm dialing, every time I click no contact, shoot, that email goes out, wherever there's an email address. And I can auto fill out templates or I can manually choose my templates, for each one of my last call results, and those will get sent out as they happen. The next thing we're going to talk about is optional dialing filters. Now, before I go any further, because I know myself and I'm going to forget, this is important. These filters have memory. So whatever filters you apply are going to still be active the next time you load the dialer up. Now, that can pose some problems. I'll show you where we alert you the fact that there are some filters applied in a moment. But you need to remember that because more often than not, we used to have it where they didn't auto apply, and then people were saying, well, geez, all he ever uses these filters. Why the heck are you making me fill them out all the time? So we went and we defaulted to them having memory. They stay there. But it can cause issues where you drill down into a list, let's say, based on call attempts. We'll talk about that in a minute. And all of a sudden, you exceed those call attempts that you set in for max call attempts. And now every time you load that list, it says you have nobody to call, and you get upset and you call us, and you're really, really upset at us. And then we go, yeah, but you said in your filters you wanted to stop your calling at 3 attempts. You hit 3 attempts. So just remember that. So let's talk about them. The call hammer I already explained. I would always leave that on. I think it's crazy that we even have it as an option. I don't know who would ever want it off, but it's there. The stop call attempts. We have a lot of people who want to call brand new expireds 3 times and then put them in an archive group and follow up with them every, I don't know, 3 months or whatever it is. So you can say, I want to call people from 0 to 5 attempts. Now, there's a blog post that's going to be coming out from Jason Morris. There's 2 Jason Morrises, and someone called a different Jason Morris. They're like, oh, Dave England from Mojo was dropping your name, saying how great you are at lead management. He is probably great at lead management, but the one I'm talking about is in Delaware with Keller Williams. And he is a very analytical person, and he decided after doing all the Excel spreadsheets and breaking down his numbers, if I don't get somebody, or this is him talking, if I don't get somebody on the phone within 9 attempts, they're not going to pick the phone up. So his looks like this. 0 to 9 attempts. So regardless of what he's calling, it's 0 to 9 attempts. If it goes past 9 attempts, oh well, he sticks it in an archive group and he calls it quarterly to try to get him back on the phone. So that's how you do that. Okay? You just set your attempts there. Not dialed, maybe you want to filter out a list based on the last time you dialed them. So let's say I don't want to call people I've dialed in the last 2 days. It's going to filter out people that you haven't dialed in the last 2 days. Not contacted, same thing. And not contacted is a great way, folks. And I hope you use a Mojo for this. If you're calling your Sphere, your SOI, and whatnot, you're not contacted is great because if you want to call them every 90 days, you can load them up on January 1. People I haven't called in 90 days, or excuse me, contacted, that's important. People I haven't contacted in 90 days, you load them up and you're going to call everybody. Then the next day you go to do it again, it's going to filter out anybody you talk to. See, we're not thinking. That's the beauty of our call wizard. Back to that thinking top point that I want you to remember. The call wizard makes it so you don't really have to think. I'm going to cruise along here because we're getting a little bit later than I wanted to get. Drop message skip. If you choose a message here, it will exclude anybody in your list that you've already dropped that message for. Case in point, you have one farm you're always calling, updating them on stuff. Perhaps you have a message that you recorded called 123 Main Street. It's about an open house. Well, you don't want to embarrass yourself and drop that again on somebody. So you would exclude that message here and only load people into the dialer that you haven't dropped that message on. Create date, you can filter out your data based on create date. Status change is huge. People want to be able to dial based on status change date. I have two inputs here. If I wanted to do this in the other method, I'd have to slice and dice my data in the database. It's just a pain in the butt. Here, you just pick it off a calendar, and it omits anybody that doesn't fall within that range. Another feature we have coming out real soon is we're going to let you put reverse status change in. So it calls oldest to newest instead of newest to oldest. That's a huge request. And then lastly, we have list price. Again, you just enter it here instead of creating sublists in your data. This is just a no-brainer. It's one of the things hardcore prospectors love about Mojo is we take the guesswork out of it and the elbow grease. So you just enter your list price and it calls people within that range or up to whatever you put in. That's the optional dialing filters. Remember, those have memory. You're going to hear me speed along here. I apologize, but Brandon's nodding at me. I'm winded. We have something called the Call Me feature. And the Call Me feature, instead of you calling into our system, it will call you. Now, if you're on an archaic phone system, and I say that with a smirk on my face, and you still pay for long distance, this is a good way for you to just pay $25 a month instead of paying for all those minutes long distance into the Boston area. Dial into our server. You purchase Call Me for $25, turn it on, enter your phone number, it calls you. You can choose your caller ID. We discussed caller IDs. The only thing I'm going to say about caller IDs is, folks, prospects turtle. Brand new expireds, do they turtle? Everyone raise your hand if you're in real estate. I'm raising my hand. I'm not in real estate. I don't know why I did that. But yeah, prospects turtle. They get 5 phone calls the day their property goes expired, and guess what? They stop picking the phone up. Or they pick you up because pick up the phone because they're crazy and they scream at you. But one way to avoid that is switch up your caller ID. They're a lot madder at the person that's called them 10 times in a row from the same caller ID. The other thing I would suggest in the case of calling a little bit older expireds, 2-3 weeks, is pick up a Mojo voice number, or it's a shameless plug, I know, or any virtual phone number that isn't tied to your brokerage. If they see Keller Williams, Century 21, Coldwell Bank, or whatever show up, that right, they have like PTSD, they're going to get fired up at you. But you show off a caller ID that doesn't have a name that really shows up with it related to real estate, and they're going to be a little kinder to you on the phone. The voicemail message you want to drop, you just pick it from here. The callback message you want to use, if you're multi-line dialing, you choose it there. Here's where you choose how many lines are dialing for you. This is only showing me one, Brandon. Does this only have a single line dialer on it? That's okay if it does. We don't have time to. Yeah, why don't you? So this is how many lines we're going to dial for you. If you have a single line license, it's only going to show you one. If you have a multi-line license, you're going to see 1, 2, and 3 options. Here's my suggestion, and I'll keep it short for the sake of keeping this around an hour as much as I can. If you guys load up a list of people you've already spoken to, you've got rapport going with them, my suggestion is don't 3-line dial them. While the callback message is rare, if you're calling someone or a group of people that know who you are, they're more likely to pick the phone up. And you don't want to drop a call back on someone that you know. So I would suggest go for the 2 lines or the single line. Same with any hardcore follow-up calls that you're making. People that you're following up with, blah, 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 blah. Don't drop a call back on them. Yeah, I would, do whatever you want. Whatever you're currently practicing, I'm sure it's working for you, but that's just a tip. The rings. How many rings we're going to dial for you? This is also an important metric. If you're calling into Zephyrhills, Florida, okay, well, first of all, if you're in real estate, you've probably been told over and over again, dial 3 rings. Well, you can't dial for that short of a period. You have to dial at least 4. Now, let's fast forward. That's great. You're trying to look for that low-hanging fruit. But if you're calling my father down in Zephyrhills, Florida, or his adult community that he lives in, 4 rings, they haven't even heard the phone ring yet. So the one thing I would suggest, if you're calling into an older community, you're going to get more pickups if you go 6, 7 rings. That's a fact. Now, the other thing that dictates, or that this can dictate, is how many answer machines pick up. Typically, answer machines pick up just outside of 4 rings, which is 24 to 26 seconds. They usually pick up around 28, 30 seconds. So if you want to limit how many answer machines you get or voicemails, 4 rings is a good approach. If you want to drop messages, and I heard Bob Leffler from Fearless Agent yesterday on a call he did on cold calling. He's a coach of Fearless Agent. I love the guy. It was a great call. If any of you were on it, I hope you enjoyed it. He's just so down to earth, and he made a point that every or 100% of the messages you don't drop, don't call back. So I've always recommended to people, once you drop a message, they know why you're calling. If you're mixing up your caller IDs, that's a different story. But, I guess I feel like it's better to get them on the phone so you have that control as much as you can have on the phone versus dropping messages. But he brought up a good point. 100% of the people you don't drop messages on don't call you back. All right, calling script. You can choose to have a calling script pop inside of Mojo. I'm going to shut this off for this session, not for any particular reason. I just want to get past it. Many of you probably use calling scripts on the wall. Maybe you have a calling script wall. You stand up at a desk like I have that goes up and down automatically, and you don't use it in Mojo. But you can, and you can automatically turn it on. As soon as someone picks up the phone, boom, that script is in your face. Same with a lead sheet. You can pick your lead sheet. I'm going to choose expired property. And you can use a lead sheet as the default tab. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So you can use a lead sheet as your default tab. Next one is filter out contacts who have a future call or appointment scheduled. If you're calling people that you've qualified, let's say it's your hot lead group. Well, that makes sense to have a hot lead in your group that does or does not have a future call or appointment scheduled. And a future call is a follow-up call inside of Mojo. So you can say, okay, I want to call all my hot leads. I've qualified them, but I don't want to call the people that I have a future call or appointment scheduled with. That could be awkward. So you check that button, and it will call everybody that doesn't have a follow-up call or an appointment scheduled for. It hopes that you either set a follow-up call or set an appointment. So that's one way to filter out those people, again, without having to do any crazy data management ahead of time. All right, last but not least, on this section in here, before we get to the dialing bar, all these settings that I'm making, I can click Save As, and I can create a calling profile. And the beauty of that is, I just click it and poof, go into the dialer. So I may have Dave's expired, Dave's for sale by owner, Dave's just listed, just sold, whatever. It's going to pick the options that I saved and automatically load those into the dialer. Again, takes a lot of the elbow grease out of getting onto a dialing session. All right. And that, by the way, is a super popular feature in multi-agent accounts, obviously, because each dialer can have their own profile, and it makes it easy for managers and account owners to manage those folks who are dialing. All right, I'm going through my outline here like I'm back in school, and my eyes aren't 18 anymore. So the next thing we're going to talk about, last but not least, before we fire up this thing we call a power dialer, I think it's the last thing. Yep, is the dialing bar. At the top of the dialing bar, we're going to show you who we're calling. Whether it's one line, you'll see one box, 2 lines, you'll see 2 boxes light up, and 3 lines, you'll see 3 line boxes light up. And those are going to dial, and you're going to see the person's name and phone number and the status of that call. Okay, so that's what you're going to see. Oops, sorry, up here. We got a help video here to help you if you have any questions before you fire up a call session. You can get help. We have our last call result buttons here. We have contact, no contact, bad number, drop message, which is a hybrid. I'll explain that in a second. DNC contact, DNC number. Here's how it works. Contact, you get someone on the phone in your head based on your logic. It's a contact. You press that. The lead stays where it is. That's important. You have to manually put it somewhere else. But by pressing contact, all of your audit trails for that record show that you've contacted someone, and it updates your calling reports. And a lot of you track those with fine details. That's important. No contact. If you don't reach somebody, if it is not a contact in your head, it doesn't meet your definition of a contact, press no contact. A few things happen. It's going to update your database that you called that number and you didn't have a contact. It'll update your reports. And it's also going to initiate call hammer, right? Because that isn't a call. I mean, that's a call hammer activated button, or that button activates call hammer. I apologize. So it's going to dial the next number. Whereas contact, you've just said, you're washing your hands with that one. I'm all done. Give me the next person in the list. Whereas no contact gives you the next phone number. Bad number. Bad number, be careful how you use it. Bad number has a function in it where when you press it, we remove the number from the contact form. Why do you want it on there? Well, you don't, most cases. I can't think of a case you would want it on there. But we mark on the record that you applied bad number to this 10-digit phone number, but we take it off the form so you don't accidentally call it back. And also, you can easily look that up. You can figure it out in your data grid to determine who you need to do a little more digging on. So bad number is what you'll use when you call someone and they're like, yep, nope, that person isn't here, or whatever the reason, you press bad number. It moves you on to the next call, and you're on your way to the next phone number on the record, right? Because that's an activate call hammer. And it'll get you off that call you're on at the time. Drop message. This button's a hybrid. It can say drop message or it can say left message. Some people want to have a situation where they always leave a manual custom message. There are times when you want to do that. If you're calling SOI past clients, what are you going to say? Do some automated, hey, how you doing? Wouldn't you rather say, hey, Joe, hope Mary's doing good and I hope little Bobby's kicking butt at soccer? You can't record that. That's just impossible. So this would change to left message if I did not have a voicemail message to drop. And in all the reports, you will see that you left a message manually. If I choose a message to drop, it says drop message. And that's when I press it when I start to hear that voicemail pickup, and it drops it in the background and moves me on to the next call. This is also going to activate call hammer. This plus button will give me a list of my messages. Let's say for some reason, this default message I choose here isn't the one I want to drop on this line. I can choose the one I want to drop on that line by pressing the plus button and choosing from the list that Mojo presents to me. DNC contact, you get someone on the phone, they're a real heater. I mean, this guy, and you're just like, what do I do? What do I do? Just press DNC contact, you'll never call them again. Or if they tell you, hey, yes, my name's Dave England. I live at 123 Main Street. This is my phone number. I'm on the do not call list. Take me off your list. Press do not call contact. Don't deal with the people who are going to get you in trouble. Just move past it and go to your next one. Don't argue with them. I hate hearing that. Don't argue with people. If they tell you they're on the do not call list, don't say no, you're not. That's hard to believe. The scrubbing didn't take you out, or whatever your answer is. Politely, kindly, and for those of you who have callers under your account, that's your rep. You should be telling people, hey, someone says I'm on the DNC, politely with white gloves, apologize, let them know absolutely I'm coming off the list, that I'm going to take you off the list and move on. That's what you should do. DNC number, on the other hand, only DNC's that one phone number. So why would I want to use that? Well, if I'm calling an expired and the tax name is Joe Dirt, I don't know, Joe Dirt sounds good. Good movie. Just kidding. And I call and I get Mary Jones, and she says she's on the do not call, I might consider that a do not call number, right? I'm going to press that because I don't know. I didn't get my target. I didn't get Joe Dirt. So I'm just going to DNC that number. And here's two tips. DNC is not it does not pertain to a household. It pertains to a phone number. So in the case I just gave you, where the person that picked up wasn't who you have on your property as a contact, you don't have to just default to DNCing the whole contact. You may say, hey, by the way, Mary, do you own these other three phone numbers? No, I don't. Oh, Mary, I'm really sorry for ever calling you. And just DNC the phone number, which will initiate call hammer, and you'll call the next number. Maybe that's when Joe Dirt will pick up. Imagine if you're right now, while using Mojo, hitting DNC contact for everybody. You're missing opportunities. Here's the other tip. This is a no-brainer. You call an agent, what are you going to press? Well, they want you to press DNC contact, right? Of course they do. They don't want you calling their listing. But you're smarter than that. You're going to hit DNC number. Not only does it take them off that record, but future imports or postings, that person's phone number is never going to come back in your system. So you only deal with it how many times? One time. And that's true about DNC contact. Those people will never come back into your system. Quick callback. It's, oh my goodness, it's already 2:57. Brandon's over there steaming. I told him I'd be under an hour. Quick callback. If I'm on the phone with somebody and they say to me, hey, call me back within the next 30 minutes or whatever, you'll use that option in the system while you're logged in the dialer. Is going to give you the opportunity to pause that current dialing session and dial that person. How slick is that? How professional do you look? Hey, let's say it's me. They say to me, hey, Dave, now's not a good time. I'm gardening. Boy, I do want to unload this house. Call me back in 25 minutes. Maybe I'll set it for 20 minutes or whatever our options are, 15 minutes. Well, here's what will happen. I choose quick call back. I move on to the next. I disposition it as contact. I move on to the next call. 15 minutes later, Mojo starts freaking out saying, hey, you got a quick call back. You initiate it, it pauses your calling session, and then places a single line out to that person that requested a quick callback. That's super important because without quick callback, if someone says to you, call me back in 20 minutes, there's a sense of urgency. They have a need, a want, or desire. And what do you have to do? You have to write it down on a piece of paper or totally get out of your calling session and wait whatever period of time that was. Now, quick callback is only designed for calls, I think it's up to an hour. Now you can do custom times. So, but it's really intended for those times you're still going to be prospecting when the time comes. Okay, if you're not in the dialer, it'll still pop the alert, but obviously it can't auto dial it for you because you're not in the dialer. Redial, very important. You call somebody. This happens all the time thanks to HD calling. You call somebody on their cell phone, they can't hear you. You can press redial, disposition the call, it will call them right back. Or let's say you call someone like, dude, I'm out my porch, I'm bringing milk in, whatever, bottled water, give me a call right back. You just hit redial and it calls them right back. Pause will pause your session. It'll wait for all the lines to finish dialing. It'll pause your session for 8 minutes. We have thousands of customers. Thousands and thousands of thousands. We have to log you out at 8 minutes. The reason we do that is to save capacity. We do warn you, hey, you're about to be logged out. Click this button to stay logged in. So we do give you the opportunity not to get logged out. But if you don't press, yes, I want to stay logged in, you will get bumped out to make room. Hang up. Hang up's another popular feature, and I promise we're going to get to a dialing session here next. When the hang up button is super important because here's what happens. People who don't type really fast like me or whatever, they get someone on the phone, that person verbally wails on them with information. They want to make notes and updates and put them in a group and send out an email, all while on the call still, right? They want to do all the stuff, but the call ends. The conversation's over. What do? Well, it's relax. You're going to press the hang up button. The hang up button doesn't disposition your call. It simply disconnects the dialer you're dialed into to your target. You stay logged in and the system doesn't keep going. So I'm on the phone with someone, I click hang up, that call with them gets disconnected. I can start singing, whistling, they can't hear me, they're gone. I do everything I want to do on the record, and then I give it a last result. Okay, I'm going to log into this puppy and start dialing. I got to do it again because I didn't have a 3-liner on there. There it is. I'm going to log in right now, and what am I going to use for a phone? I'm going to use my cell phone. Let's talk about the VoIP stuff. This is worth listening to. I know it's we're going over here, and this will be recorded, so if you have to bag out, go for it. But I'd love your questions at the end. Mojo will not give you a delayed hello. It is so rare. It just doesn't happen. Our detection is within hundredths of a second. That's a fact. Let that sink in. If you're getting delayed hellos, it is something. It's you can get a periodically you can get a delayed hello. If you call someone like my house, I have what do we have? Time Warner Cable, and we have a VoIP home phone with them. I don't know why, just to knock down the price of my internet, I think. But if I pick up the phone and say hello, that connection from me, the target, when someone calls me, to Mojo, the dialing server, there can be latency in that because it's a VoIP phone call. In the packets carrying my hello can be delayed because of latency. It happens, folks. But it's you if it's a constant issue, that's not the problem. But that can happen periodically. Call someone on a VoIP phone. More often than not, and this happens a ton, and out of the people on this webinar, half of you are doing this. You're calling into Mojo with a low quality VoIP phone. There's been such a shift in technology or in the telco industry that people perceive Google Voice, Google Hangout Dialer, Skype, Vonage, Magic Jack, the list is long. They perceive them as actual quality modes of telecommunication. They're not. They all use SIP technology. It's very vulnerable to your own internet, your own network. And on top of that, prove me wrong. Open up a new tab on your browser and type in Skype call quality issues, Google Voice call quality issues. You're going to be inundated with people complaining. And the challenge for us at Mojo is not coming off like I just said, where I said it's always going to be you guys, because we want to help you. We want you guys to succeed on the phone. It's just many of you, rightfully so, are trying to save money with a low cost phone to dial into Mojo with. We get it. We've done everything we can with Mojo, the software side, okay, to limit the resources or the load put on our users' internet, because that could cause an issue, right? If you start watching YouTube videos and start making Skype calls, there's going to be a problem at some point, unless you have a great internet connection. Well, we don't want Mojo, the software, the web-based stuff, I should say, not the software. We don't want our UI to be that strain. And I'm spending time on this because that alone can really help someone do better at prospecting or be more successful. Use your cell phone, shut off HD calling, go to my support area and look at cell phone setup or whatever, mobile phone, the mobile phone document about how to set up your mobile phone. Because mobile phones, guess what they're doing? They're all going to voice over internet, LTE, or whatever it's called, Volt with Verizon, HD calling with the Androids. So on those cell phones. So you're going to want to stay away from that stuff. The best call quality is a 4-wire landline. I'm starting to feel like that's a dinosaur, but they are still out there. Follow that up by like a Comcast or a business line phone, where you've made voice priority on your networking device. Call into us. If you're sitting there going, this guy's full of bananas, I've always had a delayed hello, we can pinpoint it. We can help you out with that. Give us a call. All right. I'm going to call my cell phone. Let's get going. Boom. And here's what we're going to talk about. This is the dial list preview. Remember how we talked about those filters carry over, those optional dialing filters can end up being a pest if you're not aware of them? Well, here's how you know. Up here, it'll say, if your list looks correct, click start dialing to continue. If not, cancel to go back to the call wizard. If we're filtering out any of that entire list based on filters, we're going to show that to you up here. It'll say, Zone Guard has filtered out 500 people. Oops, I accidentally tried calling Hawaii or wherever from New Hampshire at 7 in the morning. Don't call us first. You'll save time. Look up here. If it's not looking like it's the correct amount of records, if you're thinking there's 500 records, only seeing 50, draw your eyes up here. Go back to the call wizard, optional dialing filters, and hit clear filters and be on your way. All right. I don't have anything filtering out my data, so I'm going to get presented now with a number to call into. I'm going to dial into it. It's going to ask me for my PIN. Used to be my voice, but I got tired of hearing it. I've entered my PIN, and now it's going to tell me in a second here that, hey, you're good to go. Press the start call button. Now, here's another issue. I'm going to bring it up. Brandon, don't get mad at me over there. If you're using what I just did, I just entered PIN numbers. Sometimes DTMF is what that is, dial tone, something, something. Sometimes using Google Voice, Google Hangout, Skype, you're entering PINs on their dial pads they don't take. If you call into us, we're gonna ask you to use a different phone. I just want to make you guys aware of that. So I'm going to press the start call dialing button, and now we're dialing. We're dialing 3 lines at a time. We'll see here, it tells me what caller ID I'm displaying. It tells me what dialing server I'm on. It tells me my stats, my call session stats, and then my total daily stats, how long I've been dialing, or how long I've been logged in the dialer, how many total contacts, and how many total dials. I've made a contact with somebody. Fantastic. I'm going to shorten this up a little bit, and I'm figuring it out in real time how I'm going to do it. So I make contact with somebody. What can I do? What's on my fingertips? Let's start from left to right. I can create an appointment. I can create a task. I can create a follow-up call. If I do that, it probably means I've qualified them. So I'm going to want to group them after I do it, but I can do it. I can just create follow-up call, and I can set the date, set it to recur. Great for hot leads if you're going to really hammer someone. I can choose priority, and I can actually assign it to somebody else on the account. So that's what I can do in the actions menu as far as setting up a future task. I've got some shortcuts here that are color-coded. You'll learn those, then you'll stop using actions button here for the appointments, task, and follow-up call. I can send a hot sheet to somebody with this contact's information so they could do some future follow-up. If you've got an integration, we have one of our partners in here, like you have Top Producer, Send to Boomtown, MailChimp. This is a development account, so it's hooked up to a lot of stuff. So that's not what yours is going to look like, most likely. But if you're a Top Producer customer, you can send this lead off to Top Producer, send it to Boomtown, MailChimp. You get the idea. You can export it. You can send it to Wise Agent. Geez, this one's connected to everybody. Or you can assign it to an action plan, and I would suggest you come back to us in a couple of weeks when we finish those up for good and do our big webinar on them. But the one I want to talk about right now is this Create Contact. The Create Contact, a lot of people don't realize you can do this with Mojo. So action button, Create Contact. I call somebody, and that somebody is the nephew of the person I'm really trying to get, or maybe it's a tenant. Whatever it is, I've got a need to create a contact. You just hit, while you're on the phone, Create Contact, and you go, hey, Bobby, what's his name again? Stanley. Davidson? What's his address? Right? Get the idea? I'm not going to keep going through all this. You get the email, you get the phone number. I'm still on the phone with this person getting the referral or whatever. I put them where I want to put them. I want to put them in the hot lead. This person they given me is hot to go. They were at a dinner meeting with them, and they said they wanted to list their home. The source, I don't know, ladder source, referral. See what I'm doing? I'm doing all this while I'm on the phone. And then I hit create. Oh, doesn't like my... Like that better? Good. Create. It's created that. I'm still on the phone. Here's some other things I can do. I can put them in a group. Let's say I call this person and I set an appointment with them, or they indicate to me that they're going to be ready in 9 months. I set a follow-up call for 7 months from now, or even 5 months from now, cut it in half, maybe 4.5 months, and I stick them in the future follow-up group. Why? Because this person isn't expired. If I leave them in my expired list without grouping them, well, guess what? I'm going to call them tomorrow potentially, or whatever. I've already qualified them. So let's move them out into the future follow-up. Don't be alarmed if that property goes active again. If this is an off-market property, don't sweat it. It's going to take care of that future follow-up call. So pull it off your planner, and it's going to stick it back in your actives properties. How cool is that? Mojo does all that. Most people don't even realize it. I can create a note. I can post the note. I can make a priority note. I didn't spell that right, but it's okay. And it'll always stay at top. It'll always stay on the top, and it'll be in bold. I can edit the address. I can edit the name. It will auto save. I can look at Google Maps. I can look at my miscellaneous fields. If you're in real estate, you've probably seen these. Miscellaneous fields are where most posting vendors, us, ourselves, Mojo, Vulcan, RedX, whatever, they send all the MLS information into here. Here's something else you probably didn't know about. We have a second name now, right? You can import into that field. Vendor posting should be now posting into that field when there's a second name. Pretty slick, right? So you can refer to the miscellaneous fields here on the right-hand side. Here's that lead sheet. What do you plan on interviewing the right person for the job? 4 weeks. That's ridiculous. If you sold this home, where would you go next? New Hampshire. Who doesn't want to come look at the foliage? Flip some cows over. How soon do you have to be there? 2 weeks. Well, that doesn't make any sense. We'll say 8 weeks. And what do you? This guy's like totally unrealistic. What do you think stopped your home from selling? Price. Here's a surprise. They don't know that, right? They think they're underpriced. How'd you happen to pick? You get it. I'm filling this out. I can print it. I can download it. Regardless, if I do nothing, it's still going to save to this contact. I can send it as an email to somebody. Everybody spam Brandon at Mojo Sells. You love it. Here's that lead. Patow, bang, boom. I'm still on the call, or maybe I've hit hang up. That's how I'm doing all this. Let me continue on, and then we'll get back to the dialer because a lot of stuff is missed here when people sign up for Mojo. I can add an email. I can send them emails. I can look at the street view on the property, which won't really be one here. It goes to Schenectady, New York, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's a zip code for some reason. I can look at the home. I can discuss the home with them like, hey, Joe, I don't know how old this image is, but looks like your roof's fairly new. Wow, you got wicked curb appeal. I cannot believe that other agent didn't sell. I can sell this. When are we talking? Saturday at 2? You get the idea. I can look at activities. Anything in the future that's set to be done shows up here in the activities area, so you know, hey, I'm taking action on this. Maybe you're not on the phone with someone. Maybe it's going through your hot leads. You say, oh, I've got this activity, good. Or you're an owner on an account. You're looking at some people who use Mojo under you. You're like, yeah, these people are rocking it. I look at history. Look at expired property lead sheet sent to Brandon at Mojo Sells. Someone tells you they sent you a lead sheet. Guess what? Trust but verify. I updated the second name. We track everything. Real estate agents love that. I don't know. We didn't used to, but now they're like, I want everything. We've got emails tied into our action plans. I'm not going to get into that right now, but all the sent emails show up here for right now. We've got family information. You can add a family member. Obviously, I showed you how to put the second name in up here, but maybe there's an aunt, an uncle, someone, maybe there's a trust or something that you need to put some information in here about. And then we've got attachments. I'll bet you we've only got 10 accounts out there that have attachments actually set to contacts, but we have it in there. So that's all the things you can do. What do I do now? Well, it's likely you wouldn't have been on a call this long. You would have called and said, hey, is this? And they would have been like, blah, 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 blah. You would have pitched to move on to the next one. I'm going to click contact. You'll see at the top it goes to unlocking. That's when, by the way, during the unlocking phase, if you're a Boomtown client, Wise Agent client, someone that we do real-time updates with, that happens during the unlocking period. And one indicator that your internet's starting to poop out is if that unlocking stays lit up there for 5, 10, 15 seconds, go reset your router, because that means that we're having a really hard time posting back to that other platform. So I'm on the phone. I don't get them on the phone. I'm going to press no contact. Go to the next one. Get on the phone. It's not the right person. I'm going to go bad number. I dial again. Watch what I do with my mouse, folks. It's going to go quick because these are automated. I don't want to call this person. I'm an got me. Son of a gun. Watch what I do. You can skip. you can skip a phone number. You can skip calling somebody. Normally the call box is, watch what I do. Boom. Oh, it got me. This is going to be our next holiday party. Who can get the virtual phone numbers to X out? Boom. I just clicked it. You'll see it says skipping. I'm skipping that contact. Why would you skip somebody? Maybe you're calling your neighborhood and your ex-father-in-law or mother-in-law pops up. You don't want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to mine. So you skip it. It skips the whole record. So you can do that. That's a neat thing a lot of people don't realize. They just see that red X there and they're not quite sure what it's about. You won't experience such a quick turnaround time in those call boxes. Again, these are automated numbers I'm cranking through right now, and they pick right up. So there's like no ring time on them. And all the other ones go to busy, so it's super, super quick. All right, so that's how we skip calls. I showed you how to create a contact on the fly. I showed you how to schedule appointments, task follow-up calls. I showed you how to use the hang up button so that you have the time to make the schedule phone. And actually, let's do it right now. I'm on the phone with this person. I'm going to click hang up. Ready? Boom. Nothing happened. I'm not, look at the call timer stopped. I can breathe. Did I still breathe? Jeez, I need to get a life. The post. I'm going to put him in my dead lead group. I don't know. I don't know, add Mary. I don't know. I'm doing some stuff. Just stuff. What do we do on the phone? Just stuff. So, took a breather. Now I disposition it. Contact. See what I did there? I talked to you about quick callback. I talked to you about redial. The one thing I talked to you about pausing. One thing I haven't shown you. I'm on the phone with this person. They're like, I can't believe I haven't shown anyone this before on our webinar, but I just realized I haven't. I'm on the phone with someone. We're having a good conversation, and they're like, hey, what's your week look like next week? Well, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know. How do I figure that out? Here's what you do. You're going to click on hide the dialer. Boop. See what it did? Cute little widget here. You're going to go over to your activities. You're going to go to your, I don't know, your next week here, and you can see I'm a really crappy salesperson. I have nothing scheduled. But let's say I did in this account. I had some stuff scheduled. And this person's like, I'm busy. I'm available Tuesday or whatever, Wednesday, next week, 26th. But I can click on that and I can look at what I have due that day and be like, yeah, 4's not going to work. 2's better. Expand the dialer, continue talking to them. So 2's going to work for you? Go to Tuesday, Wednesday, here I go again, at 2 o'clock, October 26th. All right. And I save it. And I disposition it. See how that worked? You can expand and collapse that dialing bar. Works very well. So I'm going to go ahead and, if you have any questions, fire those into the questions pane. Most of you stuck in there. I can't believe it. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. I know you have better things to do, but it's Friday and maybe you're just chilling out, drinking a latte, a beer, whatever. I feel like we covered some really good content here. Yeah, Brandon's laughing because when we set up this webinar, he's like, dude, no matter what you do, it should be an hour and 20 minutes. I'm like, I'm going to do it in 45. I'm so off. So another thing I want to point out for people, I'm going to disposition this. Watch me pause it, and you'll see what happens. It says system will pause when lines finish dialing, and they will. And then it goes to a pause state, and then you'll see there is a countdown, and then there is a pop-up. So, I mean, you have the opportunity to keep staying logged in. A lot of people don't realize that. They just let themselves get kicked out, and it infuriates them. And I get it. Who wants to log back in? But we have to do it to manage our capacity. And if I wanted to resume, I could just hit resume. But I'm going to hit stop. Imagine what that does. It stops the dialer. Big surprise. So that's going to wrap up the presentation portion. From a one thing I do want to point out, some things you need to consider. Again, mix up your caller IDs. Try people more than just 8 o'clock in the morning. If you get stuck in that rut where you're calling people just at 8 o'clock, you're only ever going to get the people who pick up the phone at 8 o'clock. And that may not be enough for you. I don't know. I would certainly try calling people in the afternoon. You know, if you're in, like I was saying before, Zephyr Hills, Florida, guess what? Guess what I know to be true because my father's down there. Everyone's back from the doctor's office around 10 or 11. They're not there at 8. So you may be thinking, well, they're not working. It's an elderly community. Well, no, they're probably at the doctor's. And if you've been to Florida, maybe you're in Florida, I was shocked. I'm up here in northern New Hampshire. I went to Florida, and there's a clinic or a doctor's office. I mean, they blow fast food chains out of the water with their placement. They're everywhere. So that's where those people are at. So you just want to keep an eye on that when you're calling people. I'm not going to keep going into tips and tricks just because there's a lot of questions. I'll go ahead and open up my questions pane. Positive reinforcement. I love that. Thank you for all the nice stuff you guys are saying. Someone asked about Brandon. You didn't answer any of these.
I answered them all except
I'm not seeing that.
Somebody did ask a line desk question.
I don't see any answers. That's okay. I'm not going to leave this guy. So someone asked about Lion Desk CRM. Oh, show answer questions. Hey, thanks for schooling the teacher. Oh my God, you guys asked a ton of questions. Someone mentioned that the background noise is very distracting. I'm very sorry about that. I will never do a webinar out on the floor again. That's a promise. I have a really fancy microphone that's not supposed to pick up background noise. So I'm sorry about that. I want to lead off with that. Someone asked about LionDesk integration. I don't know if LionDesk, I don't know much about them. If one of the big brands just did some affiliate with them or something, but it's coming at us like crazy. Here's how it works, Frank, who asked the question. We don't go requesting integrations because it just we're always ready. Okay, it's like me at the dance in 8th grade. I was always ready to dance with somebody, right? Because nobody wanted to dance with me. No, I'm kidding. So we're always ready. We're about to come out with an integration with Real Geeks. We're going to follow that up with, oh my goodness, Commissions Inc. So if LionDesk wants to get in line, I'd love to integrate with them. The more people we integrate with, the better. We don't charge for it. In fact, Mojo, we don't have any affiliates, period, ever. Ask anybody. So it's a really good relationship for anyone that we integrate with because, it's a win-win for everybody. Someone asked, I'm going to read off some of the ones that are important. So please hang on there with me, folks. Someone asked, do people just use the service as a CRM? Absolutely. Yep. In fact, I think the last report I pulled in August, I think we had like 4,200 logins that were just for the CRM. So clearly, and now that doesn't mean that they don't add them and take them off dialing licenses. They do, but at that point in time, that snapshot, that was how many we had. Someone asked about the Zone Guard. This is a good question that someone asked. How does it work with these different area codes in the contact screen? That scrub happens in real time. So if whenever we go to send the number to the dialer, we hit the Zone Guard. So that's not an issue. Load it up. It will do all the heavy lifting. Someone asked, will it be recorded later? It will be recorded later, yes. Someone said my phone was fading in and out. I apologize. I have a tad of ADD, and I rock back and forth against my boom. I won't do that again either. Someone asked if someone moves and expired. This is a popular question, and rightfully so, because it can get confusing how we present things. Because it's not easy. Someone asked for a property. If it's an expired, a withdrawn, a canceled, whatever. If they move them out of the original properties calling list, what happens if they go active? I addressed it. Maybe you heard it, but I'm going to say it again. We'll go out, we'll grab it and bring it back to your active list. So that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people don't move their qualified leads out of their property calling list, because they're under the impression that once they're out of that dynamic list, the chain's broken, and that is absolutely not the case. We'll go back out. In fact, we can even, I believe it's a setting, I can verify with Brandon, we can even delete all of the future activities on that person if they go active, so that you don't accidentally call them off your activities planner. So don't worry about that. Categorize, group. Do everything you can.
but not calling.
Yeah, that doesn't work with calling lists. So he's right. He just pointed out I need to make a note that doesn't work with calling lists, and that's true. It only works with properties calling lists because those are the dynamic ones. It's why we don't let you guys as users mess around with them, because we don't want you to accidentally break that chain, because we all know how important that is, that people are calling actives or whatnot. We take it real seriously, actually. Second person telling me my phone keeps going in and out. Very sorry. All right. I'm going through them. Again, this is going to be recorded. Anybody else have any questions before I... Someone asked, does Mojo store lead details? Say if I was using it as a CRM, or is that info private to me? Folks, and actually, I'm not one to throw people under the bus, so I won't do that. It's an interesting question Frank just asked. Does Mojo store lead details? Say if I was using as a CRM, or is that info private to me? Whatever you guys bring into Mojo, the beautiful thing about Mojo, and this was by accident years ago when we designed the system, where you guys aren't in what's called a multi-tenant database like our competitors. You all have a unique database with a unique encryption key. We don't access it. No one else can access it. Your data that is in your database is not accessible from anybody else. We might see it. If you call in for tech support and say, hey, I'm having a problem moving this list around, we're going to see your data. But no, there's no one has access to it. And as long as you keep at least that $10 a month lead manager subscription, it's in good hands. After 30 days, it gets deleted. So could we restore it? Brandon's looking at me. We might be able to restore it, but don't tell anybody. All right. So someone asked, they're in Phoenix and Mojo doesn't support the Arizona Regional MLS. They've asked someone else for a filter, but why don't you guys have one too? I don't know what quite that means. Yeah, so Janice, we don't get all the MLSs. We don't have, quote unquote access to them. That's true with all lead providers. There isn't one expired company that has access to all MLSs. So in the event that we don't have it, that's why we really value our relationship with all the people that post into Mojo, because it makes us the universal dialer. We are a telephone company / lead manager software company primary. That we do the data, obviously. We have for 3 years now, very successful at it. But because of our beginnings, where we came from, we still universally accept data from everybody. So if we don't have Arizona Regional, someone else does, and chances are they connect to us. Although, of course, we have the best support from anybody out there, right? Don't we all say that? All right, so agents show up in the mapping search. Yep, people didn't. All right, any other questions on there?
Janice did have a follow-up to that.
Someone asked, oh, Janice, I see. My original question was, why not filter out owner agents?
We do with our data.
Oh, I see. So, I see. I was like, geez, last time I checked, we designed our data that way. I see what you're saying. Why don't we do that for the RedX? Brandon, I thought the RedX had a field, like a search thing, and they have a button you can push.
They used to.
That was in the Rolodex. I haven't even seen the Vortex yet. Okay, we can make that request. I have a great relationship with the guys over the RedX, both from a development side and their executives. I can certainly ask them why we can't do that. They're smart. They're a great company. They can make that work. Where do I go to set up letters and envelopes? You're going to go to the settings area and click on marketing. Sylvester, I love you for asking that question, because it means you're going to use it. Which, by the way, we're going to come out with a much better letter editor here in the near future, as well as a vast library of drag and drop email templates with images and some cute little text in them that you guys can go into like a light box and scroll through and be like, okay, I want to grab that one and I want to grab that one. So I'm really excited about that. That's what I was working on before the call today. So all the other questions were pretty basic, and they were answered by Brandon or myself just now. Is there anybody else that might have a question before we wrap this up? It's been an hour and a half. I would shoot myself in my own foot, but I don't own a gun, so I can't do that. All right. So there's no other questions. We're going to wrap this up. I want to tell everybody on this call, I appreciate you guys. Our entire staff appreciates you. Mojo appreciates you. We look forward to improving the product. We do it typically every week. This week, we skipped a week because we have this really new click-to-call workflow coming out that needed some hardcore testing, and I told the development team to stick to that rather than come out with some onesie-twosie updates. So again, very appreciative of everybody on the call. Glad to have you guys at Mojo. And until next time, make it a great day.